welcome to another exciting show. And if you could all show me your papers, please. Nathan, I'm sure you've got your papers ready to display, and I have got the lighting wrong because I forgot to do the lighting before we came up.
Oh, that's
Very
scary.
unprofessional.
Ooh, that's
Oh,
scary. Oh
and
dear.
my
This is a family
word,
show, Eric.
I know. And my word, we got a queue. We got Paul. Good evening, Eric, and all. Hachi Hachi. I'm creating the new national dish, the Keir Starmer Ukrainian sausage sandwich, chipolatas. They're only little sausages. Taste delicious. Well, that's good. Yes, nothing like a bit of cannibalism to start the show off with. DJ Beto, you don't know where those sausages have been. No. DJ Beto again. And I think we ought to have a cultural attaché. Asperger's as fudge. There would be a marvellous name for a cultural attaché, wouldn't it? You know. And we've got Mark Anthony, Mark, and Paul. I'm sure Starmer could find a good sauce for little sausages. Yes. So, as I say, good evening, everybody. And we've also got Paul English, who's evening, Paul.
Good evening, Eric. Good evening, Nathan. Good evening,
Yes.
all you rumblers and grumblers and YouTubers out there. And
Yes.
I have a slight cold. I'm sorry, I have a cold. But there we go. So, should be reasonably intelligible
better.
anyway.
And we should all
I'm enjoying it.
we should all. Oh, we got Sue Sparkle coming in, and we should all focus on curing your cold. And Dr. Mayhill's coming on in a couple of weeks' time, and she knows all about that, curing colds, and she swears by vitamin C.
So have I
and
got to hang
iodine.
on to my cold for 2 weeks? Is that what
Yes,
you're
keep
saying?
it going. Keep it going. And, well,
Good
tonight, I mean, you notice I haven't started off with a gag. And the reason why I haven't started off with a gag is because I'm a lazy git and didn't do it before the show. But I didn't say that. And no, actually, it's a serious subject we're on tonight, a very serious subject. And it's digital ID. And as you saw in the main sort of intro, my theory, this is my theory, is the government is doing what it usually does. They're testing the water at the moment. I mean, this excuse, digital ID, to get work, well, we've got a thing called a national insurance number, and you can't get work unless you've got a national insurance number. So that's a load of bovine excrement for the start off. But I think the social engineers are looking back, and they're looking and they're testing the ground, and then they'll do what they normally do. The government will be seen to back down because the people don't want it. Then, when something nasty happens that takes everybody's view, it could be something in Ukraine, it could be anything. Then little bits like boiling the frog, they will introduce something that's worse than what they're thinking of now. And that's my theory, because we've only got do you remember the petrol protest? I think it was 2000, wasn't it? When people blockaded the refineries and that, and the government backed down, and everybody said, "We've won." Yes, they backed down for 2 weeks and waited until the dust had settled, and then they put price of petrol up to double the amount. Yeah, they backed down all right, and I think this is what we're going to have now. I can see it. So before you show your papers, you've got to show your papers, Paul and Nathan. So please show your papers. We must, we've got to be, or digital IT. What's your view, Paul or Nathan?
Over to Nathan. He's the bewhiskered guest. I was just saying, I've shaved my beard off today, so I look like a little baby. Whiskers first, Nathan.
Well, thank you very much. So, I mean, there are lots of things that we could say. I'm going to talk perhaps. There are three things. What is this about? What does it mean? But then the second part is, why is it happening? And I'm afraid the blame must go on to ourselves or the public. But we perhaps have not fought back enough. Ultimately, whether or not this succeeds will depend upon our resistance. I'm going to say this now, and I'll say it again several times through the program. People that resist can defeat this. So digital ID and a biometric ID system was introduced in Afghanistan and Iraq by the Americans when they occupied those countries. And what happened? It didn't work. It didn't let the Americans control the country. They tried to impose it with checkpoints and guns and all sorts of raiding people's homes and things that we could hardly imagine. And you know what? Only about 20% of the people ever registered for those schemes. And in the end, they fell down. They didn't help the Americans control those countries at all. What's interesting is this is the sort of thing that's introduced by an occupation government, right? This is not what a government does to its own people. I'll give you an example, a shocking example. Nazi Germany. Oh, they had ID cards. People didn't carry them. In April 1945, about 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the Nazi regime, Hitler commented that German people don't carry ID cards. In fact, he couldn't get them to carry ID cards. Can you believe that? Nazi Germany and German people didn't carry ID cards. Of course, people in occupied countries, they had to carry ID cards. And that's the thing. If you're an occupied country, this is what's imposed on you. This is not what happens in a free country. A couple of other things we need to get clear. This is not about controlling immigration or fighting mass migration.
Sure.
In fact, the whole ID scheme was designed to facilitate and enable mass migration. This is not going to stop migration.
It's going to increase it.
It's not going to stop crime either.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this is all part of something called technology-led policing. And as more and more money has gone into things like CCTV and various forms of tracking and monitoring and controlling people, as the more they've put into that, the more crime we've had, the less control they've had over crime. Technology-led policing has a dramatic rate of failure. It's provided nothing positive for billions of pounds thrown into it, thrown away. So these are important things to get clear right from the start. Okay, so we've already got an ID scheme. We perhaps don't see it. It's there. It's in fact buried in Britain's electoral register. So in 2010, when the new coalition government said that they were going to abolish the previous Labour government's ID scheme, it actually continued. So we've got to try and understand what an ID scheme actually is to understand what this digital ID scheme is that's different to what we might otherwise have. So one of the major parts of every ID scheme is a national population register. Effectively, what they've got to do is they've got to create a register of every person in the country and give them a unique ID number. And that's the very start, the beginning of an ID scheme. Right? We've got that. They've created it. And in 2010, when they were supposed to have abolished this national ID register, what happened is it got transferred to the Cabinet Office, who kept a national coordination of electoral registers. So effectively, they made this national register of everyone, and they coordinated it with the police. And the electoral register has been a national identity register for police and financial services.
Really?
So, I mean, this is one of lot of people, for example, don't want to register to vote. Because if you register to vote, then debt collectors can find you. I don't know if a lot of people aren't worried about this, but a lot of people are. And this is one of the major reasons why people don't register to vote, because immediately they get tracked down by it.
Really?
So,
can you deregister though,
oh,
Nathan? Can you deregister for voting? Because I'd like to deregister. I don't vote.
so here's the thing: legally, you can't, and you probably have to move house to deregister.
Ah,
So I tried just not cooperating, and it was a pantomime. I mean, they sent me out these electoral registration cards with the threat of a £2,000 fine if I didn't register, and I just ignored them. And then they sent me out another one that was an imminent threat that they were going to prosecute me if I didn't return the card. Of course, I didn't. And then they sent me back a card saying, "Thank you for registering."
really?
Yes.
That's a classic. I
Very
tell you what
good.
happened. Do you remember the census? So I decided, I thought, well, in my mind, I live in Fockham Hall Manor, you see. But in reality, I live in a 3-bed house. So they said, how many bedrooms you got? So I got 25. and I just put Mickey Mouse, I just put a load of rubbish down. Completely inaccurate rubbish. I just sent it in. But somebody I know didn't bother to send their form in, and they got someone knocking on the door, and they said, "Oh, didn't you get it? We sent it off very, very quickly." And the chap said, "Oh, it must have been a batch that got lost." It went off and never filled the form up. So that might be a good one for the next census. Just say, "Well, I filled the form up. I've sent it off." And they say, "Oh, well, we got lost." So you never know.
So there won't be another census. And that's
Right?
another thing that we ought to know, because they've actually got all of the data live. So it's, I forget what they call it exactly. It's part of the geolocation system. They track everyone in Britain live, and they don't need a census anymore. They've got far more information than a census would ever collect. Which is why it's laughable that they say that they can't control these migrants and they don't know who they are. Of course they do. So they created a whole series of identity systems. They're national identity systems, but every country has the same identity system. And every country has a coordinated numbering system. So effectively, it's all part of one global identity system. And it's designed to exchange data between governments. So I'll give you an example of exactly what it's intended to do. So if a Nigerian migrates to Britain, the intention is that the British government would be able to look at their details before they came. When that person goes to Britain, the Nigerian government would be able to track everything that person did in Britain. And when they come back again, the Nigerian government knows everything that person did. The idea is that, say, for example, if a doctor wants to come and work in Britain, a Nigerian doctor, well, they'll be able to check his qualifications. They'll also be able to check his political record, and they'll be able to check a lot of other things they won't advertise to the public. Of course, we know that they keep a lot more information on us than they admit. And a lot of people would be extremely surprised how much information they do keep. And it's not things that. I can't really go in.
Yeah, but if I could cut in, excuse me, but Jo Brand on a show, and this is when I had a television, which is over 15 years ago. she said that the dossier now I haven't checked this out, but this is what allegedly she said on the show on a television program. The dossier that the government has got on everybody in the country is thicker than the original book of 1984 that written by George Orwell. on everything. So everybody has got a dossier that's as thick as 1984 book on them.
If it was printed, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind reading that. It'd be nice to read everybody's, wouldn't it? Let's read them all.
Yes.
And next month's
so here's the thing:
issue, Bob Smith. If you're called Bob Smith, it's the compendium. All the Bob Smiths in England. Oh,
that's right.
That'd be a read. Yeah, we could read it out at night time to put everybody.
It's an
to
instruction.
sleep.
It's an instruction manual for the government, isn't it? 1984. No, I reckon old Steimer's here at night. Oh, yes, page 25. Oh, that's it. Yes, we got to do this. Yeah.
The point you made a few minutes ago, Nathan, about them already having all this information, I think that's atypical of nearly all of these situations. When they start floating an idea as if it's up for discussion, an option, they've already pre-prepped it years in advance. They're going to allow a period of what purports to be free-flowing conversation, and you can challenge this and this, that, and the other. But it's always nudge, 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 and they've always got it all ready to go. And you go, wow, are they really well organised? It's all part of their pre-planning, a bit like all those flags that turned up the other month. You know, 1 million of them just sitting around in a warehouse, and suddenly within inside 2 weeks, they're on every flagpole in England. So these things are very well pre-planned. The other I was thinking is when you... when we all go off and don't get our digital ID, which is not a card, of course, it's not a card.
No.
It's just a big structure. It's just this big network of surveillance systems, which is obviously already in place. Maybe you have to supply ID to get one. So, why do we need a new ID when you're accepting an ID to get the digital ID? I mean, listen, I don't buy into any of the kind of stuff. One thing's worth mentioning is that the company that's got the contract, apparently, Tony Blair's son's the major shareholder.
I know. Yeah.
Really, Tony? Yes, Ewan Blair. He's a really clever lad. I should imagine he's probably done this all of his own merits, and no inside information there whatsoever. One should not predict things, but I'm telling you, this won't float. This is not going to run. I don't think this is going to run at all. I think the amount of kickback they're going to get is going to be off the charts. 2 million signatures in 30 hours. People said, "Oh, it's 2 million signatures." Well, that is a lot, but that's about 1 in 10. That'll be at least that's only 10% of people that'll be massively hacked off with it. So it's a matter of getting organised, of course, to basically squash these little bugs that are just infecting the system. They're called politicians, by the way, and we've got this virus in our own system called politicians. But it is a serious step, and of course they got their.
I wouldn't trivialise how difficult this is going to be. The fact that right at the start here we've got this encouraging response to the petition is going to be an enormous boost. People are going to realise they're not in the minority. I think it's going to be obvious to everyone. We've been talking about it at work today. Nobody's in favour of this. Nobody wants it. And yet it's going to be forced through anyway. But organising the opposition is actually going to be more difficult because of people's psychology. We're passive and cooperative. And that's the real issue that I need to get across here. So we're actually, the battle here is with ourselves, not with the government. The problem is not the bad guys. The problem is the rest of us. If we recognise this as being the work of an occupation government intending to oppress us and keep us in chains, we wouldn't cooperate. We'd fight this, but we don't. Most people are amazingly indifferent. We have to work on them. We have to work on ourselves.
I agree with you, but the thing is, we've been conditioned to be like that because people sit
and we can break the condition.
And I mean, I think that Survival Steve has summed it up pretty good here. Evening, mate. Any form of ID is 100% slavery. ID is for dumbos. Registration is for dumbos. pitchforks will be the answer if allegedly, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm just reading here. Answer if more people don't wake up soon. Yeah, they don't like it up, do they, Steve? Really don't like it up. But
I mean, the point,
So,
Nathan, that you're making there reminds me of that old adage about governments and war, which goes something like, before a government can take its people to war, first it must go to war on its own people. Well, I felt for a long time
well
that
said.
people in our role here, communicators and all the core listeners here, which is everybody, we've got to go to war on our neighbours. You've got to think they've got to be. War's possibly a bit of a heavy word, but we've got to understand that they need to be confronted. I'm quite barky and shouty about all of these things. I had a wonderful conversation today when I was down. I went for a long walk. It's been a beautiful day by the coast here today. Literally an Indian summer day. Stunning. Absolutely amazing. Even with a cold, I went for a 5-mile walk. It was great. I got to the end of the pier, and there's a guy there called Julian. I didn't know him from Adam. Unfortunately, his name wasn't Adam. But he was a slightly injured individual with one of these electric go-kart things, and he sat at the end of the pier. It was just so the water's smashing into the pier things, and it was just fantastic. And we're looking at the propellers. There's a £1,400 million wind park sited in the middle of the sea. It's just the most repulsive joke. And I start whinging about that, and he starts whinging about it. And we just had a fantastic conversation. We got around to about ID stuff. He said, "I'm not having it." I said, "I'm not having it either." He said, "I don't know anybody that wants it." I said, "Well, we've got to make sure that nobody gets it then." He said, "That's right." I think it's a matter of us scratching everybody's skin. And if we have to become irritants, we have to. And if you have to become disliked by your kith and kin, do it. Because there won't be any kith and kin left to even like or dislike you if this thing goes through. It'll be completely smashed to bits. So I think it is that serious. It's a very serious bit of madness that they're introducing. They've been creeping up to this for decades, of course. And, so, yeah, game on.
So let's talk about what this actually is, because let's try and differentiate what this digital ID system is compared with the things that they've already been running in the past. Might be really helpful to get that clear. So I think there are two types of ID. One is active ID, where people are required consciously to submit their credentials for identification, right? So papers, please. And the other is passive ID, where people get identified and they perhaps don't realize it, like facial recognition in the streets. Or for a better example, their phones bleeping their location as they walk around. Now, what's going to be different in the new system is we're going to be challenged for our identity much more. I mean, in the past, there have been relatively few occasions where we've been challenged for our ID. Maybe, I don't know, there's something that we have to do. Perhaps we want to open a bank account, or a few relatively rare occasions where we need to bring our documents along. So, and the government's talking about it in the same way. Oh, you'll need to show your digital ID to get a job. But do you remember those adverts just before Christmas about using your digital ID to buy a pint at the pub? And there's a proposal. It's not proposal, it's legislation. The Terrorism Protection of Premises Bill, otherwise known as Martin's Law. Digital ID is going to be required to get into any large building, such as a supermarket. Which is why it seems, just an amazing coincidence, that so many supermarkets are introducing access doors. So it might not be trivial and straightforward to avoid this. I'm sure they intend that it won't be. But resistance is important.
So if that applies to large buildings, Nathan, as you just said, is one tactic or one thread of action that we can look at going to local farms, which are small buildings and won't put those things in, and to force us to actually begin to support one another direct and cut out the supermarkets, just cut out. I mean, the other thing that I found quite interesting about their statement, you're going to need this to work in the UK. I thought this was hilarious. I didn't know anybody actually did any work in the UK. It's quite an amazing thing to me. I'm not being just flippant, because most of it's pointless and silly. I mean, they're going to have AI do all the work anyway, aren't they? So, I mean, I tend to view this as just this is one of the key ingredients to the removal of people, or the meaningfulness of people within their system.
I would be so broken-hearted.
That's kind of
anyway.
Yeah,
that's
right. But it's
but you know, we don't really know what they plan, and you know that they plan to increase whatever they do. So whatever it starts with, it'll get worse.
Can we not plan to?
So I think one of the things we have to.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can't we plan to basically shut down the Houses of Parliament and the BBC? That might help.
I agree.
Well, we could stop watching the BBC. One of the things we really need to get to grips with.
Does anybody actually watch it?
So one of the things we really need to get to grips with is carrying a phone, right? This is the big one. This is about making everybody carry a smartphone, right? This is the big problem with nearly everybody. They carry a phone around. What is a phone? It's a digital ID beacon. It goes bleeping your location. It records everything you do. You know, it listens to ambient noise. It listens to your conversations. The cameras are on all the time. They're watching your expressions. They're watching, you know, when you read something on the phone, they're watching your reaction. They're watching your attitude. They're watching who you talk to. People don't realize what the phones are doing. Yeah, we shouldn't watch the television. That'll definitely remove the programming. We've got to do something about phones.
I agree. And also,
I like the idea of a twin life myself, of a dual life. I wouldn't suggest that people get rid of their smartphones. I suggest they also get, in tandem with it, one of the old, you know, steam-driven phones, if you need one. I've been seriously thinking of getting one that just does phone calls and texts. Yeah, we need. In fact, there's some great business opportunities here for people to come out with the bog standard steam-driven actual portable telephone. No tracking, no internet connection, nothing. It's just phone numbers, speak to people, this, that, and the other. Whether you can actually escape the all-embracing spying eye in the network system is a question I couldn't answer anyway. Maybe you can't. Maybe it's simply just so far gone. It's so far enmeshed in terms of that it's not possible to do it. One of my things has been that I actually don't mind them listening into my conversations. I don't really care on one level. Maybe I'll care if I'm in a gulag. I'll be going, oh, drat. I wish I'd not take my phone to all those radical meetings I used to hold with Nathan and Eric. But at the moment, it's not a major concern for me. Because I work on this.
Should be.
Well, maybe it should be, Nathan. Maybe you're right. I'll tell you what my thinking is, and this is super naive of me, but I'm conscious of it, is I want the operatives to hear this stuff and to come over to our side, because I work on the basis that not everybody on their side is actually pulling for them, that they're going to have dissension internally within their systems. Anyway,
I don't think you realize people don't listen to this. Computers do, right? These computers are compiling a dossier on you. These computers are compiling a list of your friends and contacts, who you spend time with, what you do. They're creating networks of people, networks of connections, so that they know who's pivotal in that network, who's a kingpin, and then they remove them if they need to. They know where to apply pressure. I mean, one of the things that every person's dossier contains is, who would this person turn to if they were in trouble? Most people have no idea but the government knows it's got that name on your dossier. So I know a lot of people who've been arrested, and it's surprising what's in your dossier. For example, there are a lot of people who've never been arrested, absolutely clean record, and yet the government knows all of the crimes that they've committed. Sometimes, people, when they get arrested, hear their record and, their database entries being read out. It's surprising what they keep on you. There are people who, everybody's done something. But, it's very difficult to avoid transgressing the law. A lot of people, for example, are successful in the sense they've never been caught, but the government still knows about it. The police know about it. Just never bothered arresting you because it's not worth the trouble.
By the way,
when this data becomes useful is when you get arrested, perhaps they want to apply pressure to you, suddenly all of this stuff comes out. So we've seen activists, for example, getting arrested, and they're trying to be blackmailed into being informants. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the lady, but there was a young lady about 2006. She was a member of Plain Stupid. Now, whether or not you support that organisation, the fact is she was very sincere. And the police tried to blackmail her into becoming an informant. And, that she recorded it, fortunately, and went to The Guardian. I'm trying to remember, Matilda Gifford, I think her name was. Anyway, you don't realise how much this stuff happens. The police make sure they've got somebody in every group and every organisation.
Yeah,
we're subverted. I don't listen. I'm not discouraged by this. I've come to terms with it. I realise what this represents. It actually represents their weakness, not their strength. It represents the fact that they are an occupation force. Nobody bloody likes them. Do you remember how the police used to work in the 1960s when I was a kid? So, you'd have a local bobby. He knew everyone in the area. If somebody kicked a football and it broke a window, he'd know who done it. Nobody got into any trouble. Basically, there was a system that stopped anyone becoming delinquent, kept them on the straight and narrow. This was not the society that we have now. This sort of spying, this is the sort of thing that they introduced in Northern Ireland in the 70s. This is something that you do in a hostile country that doesn't want you.
And incidentally, if I could cut in there, the intro picture that I put on for this show is a picture of Northern Ireland, and it's where people had to go through checkpoints, and I think it was men to the left or the right, and men to the left, women to the right, or vice versa. And I didn't realise that it was such a police state in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. So there we are. Sorry, carry on, Nathan. I thought I'd better cut in there.
So there's been a very strong argument that, this is incidental to what we're talking about tonight, that the government, David Betts, for example, has been talking about this, Professor David Betts, that the government actually intends to have a civil war. And of course, the reason why they want that is to introduce the sort of controls that there were in Northern Ireland. Part of it, of course. And the other part is, of course, that when there's a war, the government looks to the government to provide order. It provides support for the government. Strategy of tension, I think it's called. So, anyway, how does digital ID differ from the ID system that we've already got? And, I think in some ways, this is like the tip of a much larger iceberg. we don't realize how much ID systems already affect our lives, but they're going to become a lot more intrusive. And they're going to mean the centralization of data. They're going to mean the reorganization of public services. They're going to mean that the world becomes more bureaucratic and impersonal. They're deeply connected with the financial system. This is one of the things we perhaps ought to mention, that a lot, there's been an article, I think it was a website called The Bomb Thrower, was talking about how CBDCs are digital ID. There's going to be an increasing meshing of the ID system and the currency system as we go to electronic money. Of course, people are carrying around their phones for payment, phone payment. The phone is whatever it is, your identity wallet. It contains your digital ID, it contains your COVID passport, and it contains your money. It contains your train ticket. It contains your boarding pass for a plane. It's something that you've got to have. This is all connected together. So the ID system has been connected to the financial system from the start. The banks and financial institutions had a central role in designing the identity card system back in the 1990s, and they still do. They got bank cards, and this is basically what ID cards are based upon. The whole sort of format, the electronic technology inside them, the database behind them. The banks are at the heart of this. I think we've got to realise this.
Really?
There's a guy, Nathan, called Andrew Bailey. He's been the governor of the Bank of England for quite a while, and he's just been made the head of something else recently, the FSB, financial something or other. Anyway, he's thick as thieves with the Bank of International Settlements and the whole crew. And he was talking about a month ago. I'm going to be playing this clip on my show on Thursday. He was talking about their need. Of course, it's delivered in that lovely way that they always do, as if we're all going to benefit from this. He was talking about the bank's need to. He said, we've got all the data. It's very difficult to make use of, you see. So if we get it all in one place, we can really improve the efficiency of the banking system. And the implication that you, the Dumbo listener, are supposed to take from that is that this will improve things. This is, of course, complete bunk. And but he's involved with all of this. And you're absolutely right with the CBDCs. There's nothing necessarily wrong with digital currencies, although there is ultimately. It's that they're central bank controlled. And, of course, people are still unaware that the central bank is a private cartel of money spivs in suits and in nice cars going around talking manure for their entire life about a system that we don't need. It's literally, and I just think all of these things that they do, one of the lenses through which I view it, whenever they use the word we in all of their speeches, the listener always takes it that you are included in this we. It's for the benefit of the nations as a whole. Don't you realize? No. The we is always addressing them and their immediate circle of fellow spivs. That's what they're talking about. We need this to improve the efficiency of the economy, i.e. we need this to improve our micromanagement of everybody's lives to suit our benefits and aims. We're not really bothered about what happens to them. We just need to have them parceled up and be well-behaved cattle on the tax farm. That's all that this is really about. It's nothing about enhancing the quality of life for us. It never, ever has been. They're just sort of like, they throw out little sort of baubles every now and again to keep people happy, whilst it progressively gets worse. But they only sort of mention the good bits when they didn't do it as bad as they could.
So you're touching on a very important point here, because when people talk about digital ID, they somehow imagine it's a government system. It's the government that's going to be watching us. What they perhaps fail to appreciate in all of this is it's a public-private partnership. And it's corporations that will be largely gathering this data. They'll be sharing it with the government, and the government will be sharing it back. So it's not just that the government will be using our data against us. It's that corporations will be using this data to exploit us. And it's important to understand all of the ways in which they can. So the whole idea about gathering all of this data and profiling people, getting to understand them and know who they are and how they think and how they're going to react, is to manipulate their behavior. This is what it's all about, manipulating people's behavior and getting them to do what you want them to do. So it's actually very successful in pacifying us. Ultimately, this is about changing us as people and changing the society that collectively we make up. So there's this thing called the data economy, and it's already claimed to be 15.5% of the global GDP. That's how much the value of our data represents to them. 15.5% of the global GDP. That's how much they're spending sharing our data. And it's growing. Have you seen the size of these data centers that they're building, mainly in the east coast of the United States? The data that comes from the United States. And the colossal amount. So there's a set of most of them are around Washington, D.C., interestingly enough. They're in whatever it is, Virginia, and is it Maryland or something, right next to Washington, D.C. And it's the data centers that they've built. These are not AI data centers. These are consumer data centers. They represent that the data centers that they've built in the last 5 years consume something equivalent to 20% of Britain's electricity use. It's just shocking the amount of effort they're putting into gathering our data. So clearly it's got value to them. And what is that value? The value is the value they extract out of us by making us do things that we don't want to do, because they've got into our heads and they can twist us around to make us buy stuff we don't want and to change our behavior and to keep control of us. And all of this has got a financial value.
Well, quite honestly, there's a data center. I think it's a data center near where I live.
So, can I talk about another pet subject of mine? This is something that I researched.
Yeah, what I was going to say is these data centers. My feeling is that these big, I won't say the full word, posts that they're putting up. I think what will happen is you won't be restricted as such, but if you walk out of your area, you will be fined. So you'll find, you look on your bank balance, and
data center is in your life.
Yeah. So you'll say, you went to Tesco's the other week. Oh, that was outside your area. You got a £50 fine, and you just have it all listed. Government fine. So you'll find you won't have much money because you didn't realise that you walked out of your area. That's what I think they're going to do. That's my theory.
Cities. Well, it'd be all part of that, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about something else that you might. A lot of people will never have heard about this, and yet when you hear this, it's going to change how you think about all of it. where did digital ID cards, where did the whole ID system originally came from? It came from a treaty negotiated in 1994 called the General Agreement on Trade and Services, the GATS Treaty. And this is the treaty that created the World Trade Organization. And what this was about, well, it was nominally about global trade, but specifically it was about privatizing government services. We now say, well, that's not such a big deal, is it? Privatizing government services. Because people are dependent upon government services. And the services that had to be private, well, services that the European Union made sure were privatized, were the services that people depended on. So in European Union terminology, they're called SGIs, services of general interests, services which people cannot live without. And they're things like water and health, and they're things like education. And they also include things like public safety. So the services that they wanted to privatize included the police. They were trying to, you might remember, they were trying to privatize Britain's police forces, but they somehow couldn't get it to work. But they privatized
I thought, Nathan, that the police
service.
force were privatized. Isn't? I mean, maybe I've got
No, they
the
haven't
wrong
abandoned
phrase.
it.
But aren't they a corporation?
Well, it's complicated.
Okay.
Because the police increasingly operate in public-private partnerships, but they weren't privatized. That had to be abandoned because it just didn't work. But I mean, the two leading, it's a bit complicated, but it just didn't work. They were on the way to doing it, and it just didn't work. Anyway, what's the point that I'm coming to? So the idea was that these services were going to be privatized, and corporations were going to buy and sell the concessions that they had over these different services. So, for example, I don't know, company A might decide that it wants to sell its service in whatever it is, the Gambia, because it wants to consolidate in Asia instead, or whatever. And they buy and sell these concessions to each other. And when you're doing that, you're actually buying and selling rights over the people who depend on them. Now, you've got to realize that these services are really worth money. So think about student loans. Student loans originate from this treaty. This is part of the privatization of these services, the privatization of education. The whole system of student loans, replacing the grants that were there before, that came about as part of this treaty. And the European Union was incredibly influential in making this happen. So when you think about the amount of money that people owe in student debts, and corporations buy and sell this debt. Medical debt as well, because of course the privatization of medicine and the national health services in Europe, for example, this was also part of this treaty. Telecommunications, the privatization of telecommunications, another. But anyway, the point coming to is education and health represent very large personal debts. Health is the largest cause of bankruptcy in the United States. So these are really important debts, and so these companies are buying the right to control people, to turn them into debt slaves. And it was realized back then that that's what they were doing. It was very explicit in the whole process. So they created ID cards as a means of tracking people. So effectively, corporations were creating a system to track people wherever they went so that they could never escape their debts. So part of the aim of this system was to facilitate mass migration. So you don't want somebody that you've paid for their education in one country to go and live somewhere else and escape their debt. You want, whatever it is, student loans, to be able to track them. If they go to Australia, if they go to China, if they go to America, they can't escape that debt. This is a major part of the system. So you're actually creating a system to track people and keep them in perpetual debt slavery. It's a system to buy and sell rights over people. Now, the interesting thing is, you can buy and sell commodities. Commodities don't have rights. People do. And in this process, you're turning people from human beings with rights into commodities owned by corporations. That was the intention of this system, and that's what the whole basis of creating the ID system. But it was a lot more than that. It was also a system of taking control of governments. By the way, have you got this idea? Is this coming through? So this system was created. It took time to create. It was cemented in 1999 by a treaty with UN CITRAL, the United Nations Contract Law Organization. And it created the system of EID that links all electronic cards. So say, for example, if you get a bus pass, or if you get a bank card, or if you get, I don't know, a debit card, or all different electronic cards, a loyalty card, they're all linked through a common numbering system. And that numbering system is connected together to people's identities through the National Population Register. So this population register that we talked about before, this is very pervasive. Every single card that you've got has been tied up in this population register. They've already got you connected together. They've got us. They've been doing this for a long time. And a very big thing is they wanted to be able to track people wherever they went. This is a global system. This is why all of the countries in the world have a common numbering system. They've each got their own population registers, but it's in a coordinated numbering system because it's all really part of one global system. It's interoperable. All of the countries have basically the same system, and it's interoperable, which means the data can flow from one country to another without any hindrance. The systems are all compatible. Now, an interesting feature of this is they didn't just take control of people, they took control of governments. So an implication of this, if corporations are buying and selling rights over different services in different countries, say, for example, the water service or the telecoms or the health system or the education system, they've all got to be organized in a similar way. So what they did, they've created this common numbering system, this common database system that lies behind the ID cards. They've also got to have similar government systems, if you can imagine this. So for that data to be meaningful in different countries, it's all got to represent fundamentally similar systems. So effectively, if you're a country in West Africa, as an example, your education system will have been reorganized so it's compatible with this system. What happened, the European Union, you might think of that as being a European body, but it's actually what's called the regional agent of globalization. And as being the regional agent for the most developed region in the world, it had a leading role in transferring technology to other regions. So the European Union helped over a dozen African nations install ID systems when they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. They wouldn't have had the technical resources. But not only did they, no, it's not just an ID card system. It's a system that's embedded in all of their government departments. So it's when they adopt an ID card system, all of their government departments are adopting compatible computer systems. And they don't just have compatible computer systems, they adopt a template for government administration. This is the way you will organize your education system. This is the way you will organize your health service. This is how you will keep data. This is how you will be organized. So effectively, all of these nations, as they adopted ID cards, adopted a common template of administration. So effectively, all countries have become cookie cutter copies. They've become identical. There's this, once you've gone into this system, you can't get out of it. It's very difficult. The treaty behind this imposes huge financial penalties on any nation that tries to withdraw. The obligations of this treaty force you into this system of administration. It means that if you wanted to reorganize your public services, perhaps in a different model, perhaps there would be something different that you wanted to achieve. You had a different model of social development. You couldn't do it because you don't really control your own services anymore. The template on which they're organized, what they're intended to do, is for the benefit of the corporations who bid to run them. These corporations don't exist for the benefit of the people. They exist for the benefit of the corporations that have bought the concessions. Now, when you realize that this is what the ID card system does, it suddenly becomes a lot more profound. So it's not just controlling us as people, it's controlling our governments and our societies. Does that make sense? Have you followed me?
Yes.
It's deeply profound. The ID card, the thing that you might have on your phone, is just the very tip of the iceberg. This is a profound system of social control. It's a form of globalization. It's a mechanism for globalization to control societies, control the people, and control their governments. And this is why big tech, US big tech, is so central to it all. They are, in fact, the platform that runs government services, that the framework of administration.
Well, I think
So one of the things this has affected, for example, is the design of societies, and as the services are harmonized, so are the social paradigms that underlie them. So, for example, you've seen things called convergence in government, and this is, for example, convergence in benefit systems. So what you've seen is throughout the European Union, benefit systems have converged. So Germany copied Britain's system and then enhanced on it a bit, and Britain copied Germany's system. This is what universal credit was about. And other countries have been forced into that as well. So they've got this language. It's really nice. Reform of the benefits system is called labour market practices. Because when you make benefits harder to claim, that's encouraging people to work. Isn't that nice? The language that they use. And it's all part of something called the European Employment Strategy. And this is all tied up in the ID card system. So when you think about things like universal credit, oh, I'd like to vote somebody that would change that system. Well, I tell you what, there's a whole load of treaties that are tied up in this. It's part of a system removing the autonomy from governments, removing the autonomy, the freedom of choice from societies. How can you be a democratic society if you don't have a choice? Your people can vote at an election, but what they're going to get is what's decided by the system that they didn't vote for, by treaties that they never knew about.
I think sorry.
Carry on, Paul. It's okay. No, carry on, Paul. It's okay.
Well, I think all the detail and the work that they've put in over such a prolonged period of time is useful to know up to a point, for me anyway. Because one of the questions I ask myself, I go, how much more do I need to know about the situation to defeat it? Or, alternatively, if I acquire more knowledge about this, will it make any difference? I've come to the conclusion that it won't. I've known that something's been wrong for 30 years. And of course, we, particularly blokes, understandably and rightly, we want to drill down into all the detail to sort of like take the machine apart that's come at us and see if we can find a weakness in it. It works on so many different levels that it takes the individual a long time, like most of your life, to acquire the knowledge base in all these different areas of the way that they've attacked. And of course, although this is childish, what I'm going to say, I'm looking for the Gordian knot solution. Someone's saying, look at all these complex. I'm going, yeah, but I've got a sword here. Watch. Whack. And what would that look like? I think there's something to do with the telling of stories. I'm not trying to be banal here. I think it's Socrates who said, or is it Plato? I'm always getting muddled between the two. I've got to go out for a drink with him one day. It may have been Plato who said, yeah, he said, those who tell the stories rule society. Now, what we've done, or what has been done to us, or what we've allowed to happen, because you didn't really have much choice, is we've ingested, understandably, the stories that have been emitted into our ears and eyes most of our lifetime, courtesy of the mainstream media, about certain words and certain structures, and that living in the West is great and all this other stuff. There's a story at play. It's made up. I personally don't believe in democracy. I'm not interested in it. I think it's silly.
Same here.
I think the pursuit of equality is beyond dense because nature does not provide equal situations, never has. Nothing is equal to anything else, never has been. So, I'm loath to quote him, Mr. Churchill, because I'm not a fan, and that's an understatement. But he did, in the piece that he wrote in the early 1920s, he talked about the pursuit of impossible equality, about communism, and he's absolutely right. This is a communistic system. And even if it's not fully that, and they don't even call it themselves that anymore inside their own little cliques, it's a good word for us to use. But it's the power of these words over people. They go, well, yeah, we want, like the pursuit of freedom, for example. I am not pursuing freedom. Never have been. I don't even know what that means. I'll be quite honest with you. What I'm interested in is justice. It's a different kettle of fish to me. I've mentioned here before, I don't believe in rights. I don't think they exist. I've got no idea about that. What I do know, the stories that appeal to me, the story I want to tell about my life, and about the lives I think of those that I live with, is one where we talk about, and this is going to seem really, really childish stuff, about the value of family life and to harness into people around us to find out whether they really care about that anymore. I think there's a lot of sort of physical evidence on the high street that people have become dissolute. They've become solo. They've become lone little figures out there. You see this a lot of the time. There's not the same number of happy, chirpy families on the high street that I used to see in the 60s and 70s. They're just not there. They don't seem to exist. I think, and this, of course, is also part of their plan, but I think we need our own story, and we need to be telling that most of the time, and to enroll people into the story of the world that they want to live in. I can't oppose these people, nor can I resist them, because in doing so, I think I enhance their power over me even further. I'm having to give my full spectrum attention to all the shit that they're up to, and it gets tiring because you realize they've got literally hundreds of thousands of bodies working on this kind of stuff who've all bought into that story. The police buy into a story, don't they, that they're upholding the law when clearly they're not. The politicians have all bought into a story that they're pushing freedom and democracy and improving the country. Whereas if you stand back and look, by their fruits shall ye know them, this is clearly not the case. So all of those sorts of communications about the different view are there. They're simply not heard enough. And that's part of it. I'm looking for a different way to approach this other than one on pure logic, because I don't think logic's going to get us there. I'm not dismissing it, but it's insufficient. It's one part of the toolkit. That's just an observation.
So may I rationalise what you've just said?
You can rationalise like Billy O'Nathan. Get stuck in.
So I think what you're saying is, here we are in this mess. People are too obsessed with the problem and they're not talking enough about solutions.
Correct.
If you just talk about problems and never talk about solutions, that is in fact what the truth movement seems to have done. That's the trap that it seems to have got caught in. And people who talk about problems and can't see solutions, that's called depression. It's not a constructive state of mind. So what do we talk about when we talk about solutions? Well, as you've just described, part of the thing is you have to talk about where you want to go to, what you want, what you believe in. So I'm going to call that a vision. Your vision is where you want to be. But you also have to have a map, a plan of how you're going to get there. So you have to know where you are, you have to know where you want to go to, and you have to know how you're going to get there. And these are all elements that people have to have. Now, at the minute, people don't even have those very broad concepts in their mind. They don't think in those terms. They don't put those elements together. This is one of the things that we need to talk about, what actually constructive thinking looks like. How do we build the sort of psychology that can resist this? It's actually a very complicated, it's not complicated subject, it's just remote from where people are at the minute. It seems complicated to people because they're not used to thinking that way. It's actually remarkably simple, as you're saying, Paul. But people have to learn a new state of mind. Once they step out of the trap that they're in at the minute, they'll wonder how they were ever there. How did I think like that? Why could I?
If I come in there,
they're fed things that are literally limiting the range of thought. And for this, I'm not cross with the so-called truth movement at all. I think the fact that it exists is a great thing. The fact that it's stuck is an irritating thing, but that should have probably been expected because, you know, I don't know how, it doesn't really matter how long you've been looking at this. It goes through certain cycles. A lot of people really came into this thing with 9/11. That's 24 years ago. Some of us, I include me, knew about this before then in a different way. Mine was looking at finance stuff. And it doesn't really matter how long you've been in it. I've noted for nearly all of that period that the amount of commentators that talk about solutions, you can probably number them on one hand. And it's not just about practical organization, though that is an absolutely vital and necessary ingredient. You need that. It's about something bigger than oneself, something that I think, maybe I'm looking at this through rose-tinted spectacles, previous generations had. Now, why did they have it? They had it because the technical impositions on their life were not there to the degree that they are on us now. In other words, our full spectrum attention is soaked up with their story, the story of the other side.
Yes.
We don't sit around and tell our own. I haven't got time to listen to Keir Starmer because he talks shit. His story's crap. I don't like it. I tell a much better one around my house. Come round here. This is a much better story. There's a role for you in my story. There's no role for you at all in Keir Starmer's story. And it's a story. They're just making it up. And people go, no, it's all real. Everything that exists in the world was imagined. This is what people got to get. Your imagination is real. And everything that we see, buildings that are shit and everything, someone's thought about this and then gone ahead and done it because some powerful guy up the decision-making tree said that this is good for all of us. One of the qualities that people have lost, absolutely, is the ability to question everything. The question mark is the most powerful weapon we've got. Question, 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 in a good spirit all the time. But we don't. That conversation's lost. It's not in the public sphere. I think this is why when you look at the political shows, so-called ho, 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 and I mentioned this before, like Question Time, the BBC flagship of political intrigue, and let's go into it. I've not heard one bloody question on there in 45 years, and I'm serious. They don't ask questions. They're posturing. And this is why the Houses of Parliament is just a shithole. It's hilarious. They're so inept and stupid, but you can't get through to them because they've all bought into that story. This is our story. This is the tradition that we come from. Globalism is going to improve the economy. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. These are Barnum statements. I'm quoting from that film Barnum World. Barnum statements are these meaningless slogans that they come up. Make America great again. What on earth does that mean? It's just horseshit. We're going to improve the economy. Sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Literally, people need to stand in front of them and go, I haven't a clue what you're talking about. Because we haven't. Because what they're talking about is an enmeshed story that's built on their aims and goals, and you're not in it. You're not in their story. But they've managed to seduce the audience. The audience think they are. Well, I'm in the theatre. I'm watching it. I must be part of this, right? No, you're not. You're the object of the attack. And the best way to attack you is to make you think that you're part of it. You're going to be dragged in, and then they're going to take the rug out from underneath you like they've always done for those of you that have read history. And again, another problem, people don't read history. They don't. And the history that they have read has been this homogenized version where they've stripped out all the stories from the other side. So they've got less than half a view. They've got a third of a view of history, and it's all completely biased to fit in with this story. Communism is a story. Capitalism is a story. They're all bloody stories, and they're crap. And I think another ingredient, and I know this takes it out to another, is faith in God. And I'm serious about this because morals and ethics are tools, but they've come underneath faith. There'll be times when those things get stress tested and they'll fail. And without faith, without a conviction in something greater than yourself, you actually don't even know why you live. You don't even know why you're alive. If it's all about the mechanics of civilization that we're going to sort out, why bother? I might as well just be a little mouse in mouse utopia and get crushed. And that's unfortunately where most people have got to, because they haven't led a life of inquiry. Most of it gets kicked out of people by going through the school system. So one of the things that we need to look at is don't send your children to school ever again, ever. Nobody, stop tomorrow. Nobody goes to school at all. No, you've got to go to school. No, we're not going. That's one thing. Why would you take your child now and stick him into a system that's going to turn him out to be meat for the system in 20 years' time? Look at the caliber of the politicians that we've got. They're unbelievably stupid people, but you can't convince them of that. Their own stupidity stops them finding out how thick they are. It's we've got to work with good people and build the fire up. That's it. Sit around our own hearth fire with our kith and kin and say, this is who we are as a people. This is why history is important. We are this people. We're Saxons. In my case, we're Saxons, and we're Gaels and Celts, and this is what we do. And when people fuck about with us, we fuck them over so bad when we kick off. But there's only 3 of you left. There used to be 3 million. Where have they all gone? Sorry for swearing, right? But sometimes it takes it. We need a little bit of mustard in the ham sandwich. That it's a fire that is required. Until that fire is really burning in people. This is why I talk to everybody that I meet. I don't know what your day's like, but I get up on a morning and I'm out walking. Everybody I walk past, I say something to. I'm trying to find one, and I do find where there's a little light in the eye, anything, and I'll talk to people for as long as I've got, half an hour, about anything at all, so that they know that I care about our life together. I do. And I think that's part and parcel of what we've got to do as individuals. Just get out there and engage with anybody that's in front of you and stir it. And if you get a mouthful back, don't sit there crying. Just start laughing about it, and learn to fend your way verbally. It's very important. We used to be a much gobbier people, and we need to get really gobby.
Alice Gorgeous has come out with a good one here. During the Velvet Revolution, they set up parallel systems and turned their back on the overlords. And Survival Steve, Sixblade, is, I think what we're basically saying is what Survival Steve is saying all the way along. The solution is natural law. Nothing will change this fact. This is what the ruling elite keep hidden from us because it is the only answer. And that is, who said when we're born that we should have a government over us? And who says that we should have a local authority over us? No, I mean, if you work it out where you live with the amount of houses, you could probably, I've worked it out where I live, and there's 55 houses, and we could, if we got independent rubbish collectors, people to sweep the road, and someone like a security or policeman to walk around to make sure everything's okay, it'll cost a quarter of what we're paying council tax. A quarter. And if whoever you employ is crap, they get the order of the boot and we get someone in that can do a better job. And the bin collectors would come on the day that we want, not what the council want, what we want. And this is the thing. It's people power. People need to take the reins. But the trouble is, I personally think the truth movement, the reason it's not getting anywhere is because they're in shock. Now, it sounds a bit weird that they're in shock, but shock does very strange things to you. And I've been in shock, and what it does, it returns you to your childhood or a teenage state. Not if someone tiptoes up behind you and goes, boo, no. But if you're in shock, and sometimes people can have shock that's inside them, this is what happened with me, that was released by another shock, believe it or not. But going further on, you look at whatever we got around, it's all fear porn everywhere, and stress. You park your car, you used to be able to drive down the road and park almost anywhere. You can't now. Got to pay this, you got that. There's cameras looking at you if you do 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. And I think they're going to extend that to civilians walking around in the street, like they've done in China. So if you walk down the cracks in the pavement and it's illegal in some borough to do that, then you get fined, and they can take it straight out. And this is what I was saying earlier, they can take it straight out of your account. So this is the thin end of the wedge. But what I can't understand is how these MPs, if they've got families, their families have got to endure that. Their aunts and uncles and things like that. And this is why I believe the majority of MPs are psychopaths. They've got to be to do the job. Especially
I think, Eric, many of the MPs, likely, if we take a more enlightened view, are in shock too. They don't behave like proper leaders of anything. Not that I'm looking for one. But you see, I think you just created your own job brief, Eric, to put you on the spot. You've got to get that organised. You've got to give it a go. Even if it didn't happen, this is the thing. We've got to start shooting at the targets that we want to. And even if we miss, right, we will learn something. And also, what else are we supposed to use our time for.
Hmm.
It's a straightforward proposition. Either we want to live as a nation of people, which means my race. Sorry about if you're not in my race. You've got your own challenges to deal with, and you've been given gifts to do that. But one of the problems we've got is that they've flooded our nation with all sorts of other people who may be great, may not be great. I'm not bothered about that. The fact is that's part of the agenda to undermine our resilience and cohesion as a people, and it's worked. And I get irritated with loads of my kith and kin who haven't got the balls to say the truth about stuff because they don't want to be thought of as being a racist. Well, I am a racist, right? And that doesn't mean that I hate the other races. I have to keep banging on about this. I ain't got the time or energy to do it. I'm a racist for my people. And I want all people to be racist for their own people. And that's the only way to break this globalism thing up, or at least it's a key ingredient. No one's interested in these supranational organizations because they, I would suggest, are the most racist, in the worst sense of the word, organizations you could have. They're waging war on every single race to blend them all together into this rudderless mass of people who have no history. If you produce race-mixed children, those children don't know which history is theirs because they don't have one. That's exactly the part of it. So we've got to get into every toxic topic, particularly in the West, that you're not allowed to talk about. Those are the ones to talk about. They're absolutely the ones to talk about. Race is one. Of course, I think banking's the main one because I just want the bankers put out to pasture or whatever you think is right. But
write about the narratives, fighting the narratives and talking about the things that they won't let you talk about.
That's right.
Listen, can I get ID cards? Because digital ID, because I think this is our only opportunity to do so. Forgive me. I just feel that this is a moment of crisis. People might have tuned into this show hoping that they're going to get some answers, and I'd really like to give them something, at least something to think about. So one of the things we mentioned very early on was how does this new digital ID proposal differ from the comprehensive ID scheme that we've already got in place? And the things that are going to be new: biometrics, recording the use of ID, the visibility of the system. It's going to be in your face. But most of all, I think it's an exercise in psychology. Let's just go through these points. So biometrics have been coming in to various ID schemes in other countries. They haven't appeared in Britain, but they have appeared in places like Ireland, and I'm trying to think now, the Netherlands. I think it's the Netherlands. Could be. Anyway, the point I'm coming to is it's been growing. It's part of this system of active ID, where you're forced to identify yourself. So last Christmas there was this advert for somebody. You don't have to produce your driving license to buy a pint. You can show your digital ID on your phone. The thing about that is, it's actually recording every time that you identify yourself. It's making you engage with the database, right? So we're being recorded every time we use digital ID. But the main thing is, it's in your face. They're asking you, they're forcing you to engage with this system. They're making you aware. It's an act of submission. It's signaling a change into a different type of society. Now, my view is the ID system is only the enabler. It's the foundation upon which something else will be built. So yes, it's a foundation. Foundations are really important. What do they intend to build? So they've given some signs of it. In 2021, the UK government was part of an international program, an international conference, to develop an international harmonized system of social credit scoring. Was that a G20, a G8 conference that happened in Britain? Yes, It was the G8 conference that happened in 2021. And they published proposals to create this international harmonized system of social credit scoring. There's been an IMF proposal on that. Social credit is part of a public-private partnership again. It's consolidating data from government and the private corporations into a centralized database, a centralized score. And the idea is it's not going to be national. It's going to move with you wherever you go. You can't leave your past behind you. You can't move on. It's a public-private partnership in behavior control. This is all about coercing people into changing their behavior. It's a form of algorithmic reward punishment system that is arbitrary, lacks all transparency, accountability, or any right of appeal. They can make their judgments about you. You've got no appeal. You don't even really know what it is, but you know it's going to affect your life. People get scared about that. It affects people's behavior. They get scared. We know that once these systems are created, they just expand in scope. They don't wither away. Social credit ultimately is a pervasive form of psychological conditioning. So what happens if we have a society that's based upon psychological conditioning? Ultimately, it's going to homogenize us all, and it's going to coerce us to become bland and the same. People who show, how can we put it, differences, diversity, people who show creativity are going to be penalized. We're heading towards a very boring and unhappy world. And all of this is about control without consent. The most interesting thing is, most of the time, people won't even be aware of the pressure that's being put upon them. It'll be pervasive, it'll be part of their thoughts, and it'll be something they can't identify and put their finger on. It's very difficult to rebel against something like that. Once we lose this, once we become conditioned, we lose our ability to make our own choices. We lose what actually makes us moral beings. We really, in a sense, will cease to be human. What we're fighting for here is ultimately a battle for our own humanity. Will we just become conditioned, passive consumers? This is the last chance we might have. This system's only going to get more powerful and more entrenched. This is like one of those crucial moments, a moment when we're forced to stop and take note. After this, there might not be another moment like that. The system will, once the noose is around our neck, it'll just get tighter. There won't be a moment like this again. So one of the things I think, I'm going to come back to something I mentioned at the beginning. They tried to introduce this system in Iraq and Afghanistan, and people rebelled against it. The system there was designed to be inescapable. The system was enforced by men with guns. The system was enforced by checkpoints and by barriers and by fencing people off into their own neighborhoods. Like 15-minute cities, but with real walls and with guns and checkpoints, not with cameras and with fines, but, with concrete walls and soldiers with guns. And yet, they could only get 20% of the population to enroll in that. People resented it. People realized it was the tool of a foreign occupation. That's what we need now. We just need to see this for what it is. Right now, we're ruled by an occupation government, a foreign occupation government. These people don't identify with us. They're foreigners. They're globalists. They're nowhere people. They're not from our society. They don't want any part of us. They despise us. They regard us as stupid and parochial. They hate us. This is an occupation government, and this is a tool of their occupation. It's a tool of oppression. You've got to get this psychology into your mind. If you do, you might have a chance. The other thing that happened in these countries is Iraq and Afghanistan, is they actually developed resistance networks.
Wow.
Now, I'm not talking about violent resistance. I'm talking about just survival. What happens if the system cuts you out? What happens if you can't get your money? What happens if you can't get into a supermarket? There's got to be another chain. You've got to have an alternative food chain, an alternative economy, a parallel society outside the government's control. One that's independent of the occupation forces. I've been talking about this for a very long time. We need to look from history. We need to look at the lessons from history. We could look at various countries that have been occupied or oppressed. We could look at Britain, for example. Because if you looked at Britain 200 years ago, it was not a pleasant place to be. The majority of the population had been displaced from where they were living on the land, and they'd been forced into cities, into a melting pot where they'd lost their identity. They were forced from communities where they'd lived for centuries into places which had no identity, where they were overcrowded, maybe 3 families living to a room, where they were forced into oppressive employment in, for example, mills, where they could be beaten at their workplace. There were all sorts of punishments in society. There was the death penalty for something called seditious libel. If you spoke out against the government, never mind the 13,000 arrests a year in Britain for speech offences at the minute, back then, you could get hanged for talking out of turn. There were laws against what was called petty treason. Petty treason was defying authority. If you defied, your betters in society, that was considered equivalent to defying the king. You were defying authority. The elections in Britain were a joke. Less than 1% of the population was entitled to vote. There was nothing fair about it. There were some constituencies in which only a dozen people lived, and there were other constituencies in which millions of people lived. There was no secret ballot. There was enormous intimidation. How did we get from there to the vastly different society about 1900? Well, what happened is ordinary people got round to organising it for themselves. Now, there were lots of things that people did. They organised mutual banking, the building societies. They organised things like the co-ops. But mostly this happened after people realised nobody was going to do it for them. If they didn't do it for themselves, nobody else was going to help them. You know, they tried to organise representation in Parliament. There was the Chartist movement. That was the attempt to have, you know, things like fair elections and everyone having the right to vote. But of course, that was just put down with violence. You can't vote your way to freedom. You can't. You've actually got to have some sort of standing in society before they'll pay attention to you and give you your rights. So what happened was, as people gradually increased their prosperity with things like mutual banking and, you know, cooperatives, their own businesses, as they established their prosperity, they became important enough that they couldn't be ignored anymore. So they went from having just a few percent of the economy up to having about a quarter, which is still not a lot, but it's a lot more than about 5%. And suddenly there became an interest that was large enough that they had to be acknowledged. They were a force that had to be negotiated with. And that's when ordinary people started to get representation in Parliament. So what I've just described there, that represents creating an alternative parallel economy. It was done back then. It took time, but it worked. So how long did it take to get into the situation that we are today? I'm going to say that the decline into our current mess started about 1960. Let's say that. So we're talking about 65 years to get into the abyss that we're in today. This is not going to be turned around in 5 years. We're not going to vote our way out of it at the next election. This is something that's going to take decades. It's going to take at least as long as it took to get down here. We have to try and set up a movement that is capable of lasting for generations, lasting longer than our lifetimes. If we're lucky, our grandchildren might see the fruits of this. I know this isn't an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to hear. People want instant solutions. But one thing that I can tell you is, if you start this now, you'll be grateful. You'll feel the benefits immediately. We're not going to get back to the world that we had instantly, but anyone who takes part in creating an alternative parallel society will get rewards. They'll get the reward of an authentic life, the reward of real friends, the reward of meaningful connections with other people. Because really, the world that's being offered to us by corporatism at the minute, by globalization, is just phony. It's false. It's zero. It's just a whole load of rubbish. We want a world where we've got connection with real people. I know this is going to sound a bit nebulous to people, you know, but you want to try it. Having real friends, talking to real people, knowing who you can depend on, knowing that there's somebody who will look after you if you're in trouble. This is what working class people used to depend upon. This is what mattered to them in their communities. This is why in the 1960s, urban planners made it their primary objective to break up such communities. I know that the city planner of Newcastle upon Tyne, in the urban redevelopment happened then, that was one of his clear objectives. We must break up such groupings. They may enjoy an extrovert social life and like their surroundings, but they are an obstacle to progress.
Yeah.
You got a good point.
They destroy our society and our communities, and they were clear about the reasons why they were doing it. And now what have we got? We've got televisions, we've got mobile phones, and we haven't got anything real. We've got loneliness, an epidemic of loneliness. We've got people taking drugs. We've got addiction. We've got people addicted to drugs, people addicted to gambling, people addicted to their mobile phones, people who can't see how empty and unsatisfying their lives are.
Could, if I can cut in there, could digital ID, or the threat of it, may be a blessing in disguise? Because it may wake people up and something good may come out of it. Look at it from the other point of view. Probably people need a
if we make it so.
Precisely. And I think that, there was a chap that did a fantastic film, and I couldn't get it on here, but I was going to record it and put it on here. And he said, if everybody said no to digital ID, the government they'd just be powerless. And they'd try and cut off our food supply. But if we formed cooperatives, churches and places like that, where people could go, town halls, and we barter to get food, and then have our own money, our own finances, and I think that is possible with the gold back. Please look up on the internet. It's the gold back. They're doing it in America, and it's expanding. And that is notes that have got a little bit of gold in them, but they go up in value instead of down. And I think how the Rothschilds will let them get away with it, I do not know. But if enough people do it and say no, and you can see through what the Rothschilds are up to, and these usury scammers, what they're up to, we have our own currency. I think that is the core to most things. And
other even simpler things like silver coins. Because silver, gold was for rich people. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit out of date, but the price of silver has about doubled since but I used to say an ounce of silver, a 1 ounce coin was worth about 20 quid, 20 pounds, and
no, it's 22
a half ounce. Those numbers are out of date now.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over.
There's a half ounce, quarter ounce coin.
Well, no, they got a silver sovereign about 5 years ago was £22. It's now worth £36. A gold sovereign 3 months ago was around £600. Is now almost £700. That's how much it's gone up.
I think whatever we use as money, and I'm fine with gold and silver, but one must bear in mind that the prices that we quote, which is their story again, so gold is now what, over £2,500 an ounce, is it, or $3,600 an ounce, the highest it's ever been. These things are still slightly meaningless because they control the exchange makers, the administrative interloper, the middleman. They're the people that have been writing the story of Western civilization for 300 or 400 years by controlling the prices of things in markets. So we now say, and it's true to say it, that silver's worth an awful lot more. But the other thing you can say, which is equally true, is that this means simply that the pound, the government money, is worth less. one goes up, one goes down. It's what you've got in your pocket. The main value of
But
it
it's fiat
is,
currency.
will
isn't
your
it?
neighbour accept it when you want to buy his goat off him?
Precisely.
Now, the thing historically, the things about gold and silver is, whenever people have been escaping a country, those that have had gold have been able to do it. Because border guards, everybody in the world, if you drop a gold coin in their hand, they recognize it. There's like a visceral connection with people. It's ancient. It's like in the blood about gold. It seems bizarre, but it's true. I've seen it on people's faces. Most people have never handled gold coins. And it's astonishing. I think I mentioned this before. I used to mint them about 20 years ago. We used to mint gold coins. We employed a mint in Idaho called the Sunshine Mint. It's there to this day. And we designed a coin called the Global, which, of course, I'm ashamed now to think that it was called that. But the reason behind it was, I looked at all the actual gold coins that had ever been minted. The big ones are the sovereigns for us here in the UK. The Krugerrand is a huge number of Krugerrands out of South Africa. And the American Eagle, which is a 1 ounce gold coin. And you look at all of these things, and they're valued on the grains of gold that are in them. Oh, the amount of grams, it's what is an ounce? It's 31 grams, is it, or something like that?
I don't know.
Well, it turned out at the time when we were looking at this, I thought, well, you've got a pricing chart then. You could come up with a unit which is like, I don't know, 1/10 of a gram of gold, and you have to call it something. So we just thought we'd call it a global, not because I'm into globalism, but because the interesting thing or an aspect about gold is, if you're in Japan and you're a Japanese person and you've got an ounce of gold in your hand, and I'm an American citizen in Chicago and we've got the same thing. We believe that. It's actually true as well, unless, of course, you've got some poxy ones that have been replaced with tungsten, which they did years ago, by the way. Johnson Matthey, their big gold storage in London, the early 2000s, they went down and checked the stock, and half the bars they'd bought were basically gold-covered tungsten. They'd been diddled because tungsten has got the same sort of weight and all this, that, and the other. The key, I think, is the working class support network. That's the thing. And that's why I've talked about parishes, and we've got 12 to 15,000 village halls in this nation. Now, I view those as potentially the spontaneous, local, directly connected with your neighbor meeting points. And I'm thinking what I need to do is I need to get off my arse and I need to walk around here and find my nearest little hall. And once a month or once a fortnight or however frequently we can do it, we say, look, we're getting together to talk about things. And if you want to play drafts in the background, you're more than welcome. If you just want to turn up and have a cup of coffee, you can do that too. But we're going to get people to come along and spend 30 minutes talking about what's really going on. This is not a political movement. It's a defense organization for the English and the Scots and the Welsh and the Irish, right? It's our defense structure. Or we come up with a word that, you even say that to people and they sort of go, I could be possibly involved in something like that. It sounds all confrontational. They don't realize that they're in a confrontation already. They just don't want to, they want to sort of out of sight, out of mind. That's what I need. I actually need to do that. And I'm going to do it. I've got to go and I speak to so many people. I need a card to give them and say, once a month, I have a meeting here and I want you to come. And we talk about things and you might have something interesting to say. And if you do, you'll be given some time to say it. You've got to start connecting and make that so exciting in comparison to the crap they watch on TV. Of course, I know I'm being Ronnie Optimist saying this, but you know what? If we don't get out and do something, nothing's going to change. So it's literally physical on the ground action. I like talking, but I'm sick of talking as well. I'm sick of it. I've spent, I've mentioned before, the thing that got me into so much trouble was issuing our own money. We just went at it and just did it. It was amazing. The energetic response from people was off the charts. And when we had 6 ounces of gold, I had 6 ounces of gold, and my mate went round the pub. He wasn't my mate, really, but it's just a guy that we met here locally. He knew everybody in this pub. He said, can I take that from you? I just want to go and see what... I said, sure. So I thought, is he going to do a bunk? Right. It was about 250 quid an ounce. So it's 1,500 quid's worth of gold, which was a lot of money to me back in 2003 or whatever it was. But he went round to all these people who I didn't know, but he'd known long standing. And he said, put your hand out. And and he dropped like 3 ounces into their hands. And they were, all their faces lit up, and they were going, what's that? You know, he's going, that's gold. I'm going, really? No one's really seen it or touched it or used it in that particular way. That's one of the things that could be mobilized, was the word I used. There's over 150,000, maybe more than that, sovereigns, right, in people's drawers and envelopes around here in the UK. That's a lot of purchasing power. It just needs to move. If it sits still, it's not servicing any goods and services. I don't want gold. I want good steak. I'm happy to give you gold if you can provide me with a good steak, and I've got some. The strength is in your neighbor, and your enemy is your neighbor. It works both ways.
Yes.
It really is, because your neighbor that's not been reached and pulled into this conversation is the one that will put a uniform on and will hit you over the head with a crowbar at the rally in the street in 3 months' time if you've not swung them over to this conversation. You're inviting people to say, look, we think it's worthwhile participating in the outcome of our own lives. What do you think? Do you want to meet up with other people that are on the same wavelength? Of course, it will be the minority, but if you can get a ball of energy going, I've got to try it anyway. I've just got to give it a go. I mean, I meet for polite meals and stuff, and they're fantastic, and they're really, really good, and I need it as a human being to sort of feed me a little bit of fire. But I think it's a matter of standing in front of people that you don't know and going for it and actually dealing with whatever comes back, which is probably going to be a lot of verbal abuse, but that'll toughen you up. Be all right. You won't die. Well, you might do. But you're going to die anyway if we don't do it.
Sticks and stones, that's the thing. But I think that what the government are very good at doing is dividing people. They're brilliant at it. Divide and rule all the time. That's all they've ever done. And I think it's a time we learnt their little tricks. But I mean, what I was saying about earlier about the truth movement, we have to ask the question, why is it so ineffective? Why? I mean, when you look at the yellow vests, they were very, very effective until they infiltrated and destroyed from within. But I think that it's easy to... I'm not criticising, and all I'm saying is I think that there are a lot of good-hearted people in the truth movement, yes, but there is no objective as such laid out. And this is the problem. The powers that be have got an objective, but have we got an objective? Because if I design something, I actually see in my imagination what that finished product is going to be. It very rarely turns out as I first envisaged it. That's the way things evolve. But we have not got an objective. That is the problem. They say, well, we get rid of the government, or we do this. What practical steps can we take for that objective to say, yes, we're doing something? It's like battles. Before an army goes into a battle, they have an objective to get to such and such a place. Years ago, we had an enemy that looked dressed differently and were coming over the hill. It was very simple, very, very simple. If you don't get rid of that lot that's coming towards you, they're going to get rid of you. Simple. We can't see that enemy now because it's fought in, as I'm quoting now what Survival Steve said, it's in our mind, it's in our brain. And he's right. It is in our mind, and we've got to understand that. But we've got to find an objective. What is it? And have little objectives little goals that we get to win. What are these little goals that gets to the main objective? This is the problem. Any ideas for initial little objectives that each of us could do?
Can I just interject here? So I'm trying to be helpful here. I've talked about this before. What you're both trying to address is something that I've heard described as the spiritual revolution. So in conventional politics, people look at things in adversarial terms. People who've been through the spiritual revolution instead try and look at things in constructive terms. That means avoiding complaining and instead looking for constructive things that can be done. Looking for solutions, looking for concrete action, finding people that we can work with, building networks of cooperation, and developing a positive attitude. That's the hard one, actually.
That's right. And ignoring government, saying, I'm not interested in their fear porn. And it's true what you said, Paul. What Keir Starmer says is horseshit. Why put our energy? Because remember, like attracts like. If you give them too much of your energy, you're weakening yourself and you're doing what they want. So really, I think the most important thing is to ignore government as much as possible. Just ignore them. And
I think we have to just give a much smaller percentage of our attention spectrum to what they do. You have to pay some attention to it, because I think if you view it right, they give you clues or will provide good guides to what our next set of actions should be. But if I think about the story that I want to tell, I know I'm not telling it often enough to enough people. And that's just the way I say it. And everybody here says it their way, and that's great, right? It's not about there's only one way to go with all of this. I think also historically as a people, or any people, any group of people that do not have a faith, you can define that however you want, but that don't have it, die out. They just die out because they don't know why they're alive. If you don't acknowledge God, no one knows even how their kidneys work. You can have explanation. You don't even know. You think, I just start off with this all the time. I'm walking around, I'm going, this is actually, like today, I'm walking around, I'm going, look at me walking around. You know, things that I just took for granted on autopilot, which you're supposed to do when you're young as you're banging into life. You stop back and you go, this is actually quite amazing, really. Here I am. I'm down here for a certain lifespan. I don't know what day it's going to be when I'm not around anymore. You don't think about that at all when you're young, because you shouldn't, because you're just absolutely blown away with life. Hopefully, you know, at times it's just an amazing thing. And to maintain that connection of appreciation for the fact that you've been given life, if it's not included in your thinking and it simply becomes about tactics and logic and morals and ethics, they're not enough. They're vital, but they're not enough. You'll lose your way, because somebody will turn up at the meeting and say things better than you and hijack it in a slightly different way. Without that common base, shared understanding of obeying the laws of God, we're stuffed. And I only say that from looking at it historically. Whenever a people have done exceptional things, when they've gone above and beyond what they thought they could do, it's because they had a conviction in a power way, way higher than themselves, because they're right to have it, because there is one, because there couldn't not be one. And blokes particularly go around thinking, like the knobs that we're up against, to listen to them, you think that they know what they're doing, and people get drawn into it because it's the only story that you hear. Oh, we've got these technical solutions to that. I'm not interested in any of their solutions, because they're all for problems which they've manufactured. They aren't solutions at all. They're not going to solve.
I think this is getting a bit abstract at this point. I mean, I do agree with you.
It's abstract at all. I think it's absolutely.
The point is,
the people that we're up against, Nathan,
can we wrap up what we were trying
live in the abstract world. I think that's the difference. They are abstract. They view everything as an idea. They like in the French Revolution, they got rid of God and they replaced it with junk. Liberty, fraternity, equality. What a load of crap. It's total horseshit. And then they became this dissolute people who chopped 28,000 heads off, and they lost themselves. Psychologically, they died. They turned into these intellectuals, the Jacobins and all this other stuff. People don't understand this. That's why, for me personally, the French Revolution is the most evil of them all. It's sick at a fundamental level. Anybody that goes and reads Edmund Burke, a man who was like the only voice in England that opposed the French Revolution, and you read what he wrote, you go, right. He's correct on every single point. Every single point he's correct on. And if you dismiss God out of the thing, God won't let you win. That's my view. You don't have to share it. You won't win. It just goes, I built this place.
I don't believe in God. I can show societies that don't.
But, I mean,
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Nathan. I didn't quite catch what you said.
Believe in something.
Yeah, but what's annoying me is that these powers that be are throwing out these false idols Oh, Tommy, he's marvellous, and oh, Farage, he's going to do this. No, they are the jailers. It's more like being in jail than saying, oh, we got vote next week. That's good. What prison officer are we going to have looking after us? That's good. Are they going to give us more time to eat our meals and things like that? It's bullshit. No, we don't want that. What I think is possibly an answer is what they do in Turkey. That is silent protests. And the police don't know how to deal with it because, let's face it, governments want there to be violence. They want there because they want to get their heavy mob in and, controlled opposition in. And I can't think of the word now, but they always want that. That's all governments think of is violence. What they do in Turkey, they stand outside public buildings completely silent, holding placards up and giving out leaflets, but they don't march. They stand still. And then after about an hour or two, they're relieved by another group and they keep on outside places like local authorities and that, where they demand that they'll have something changed. They demand this, demand that. But it's silent protest. They don't go shouting, don't go hollering. It's psychologically, it's far more powerful. The government don't know
We've got to do more than protest. We've got to do more than protest.
I agree.
So at the beginning, what we've got to do now is gather people together. We're in a phase, the government's announced this, it's not going to happen immediately. We don't know how long we've got. We maybe have 6 months, we maybe have a year. But we know the direction that this is going in. We've got to build constructive networks of support through which we can access things like food. If, for example, they shut us out of the money system. This issue of demonetization. This is a real problem. It's not just a problem for websites. People are getting debanked. This hasn't gone away. We've got an awful government. This is the people that would. The current petition against the digital ID system is going to be a great rallying point. We have to use this opportunity and build some momentum. People, you've got to start working together. You've got to try and meet and come together and form your own local groups. You've got to try and be more energetic than you have been in the past. It's really important to work with people that you know. Try and form a group amongst people that you know you've got a real connection with, not just somebody you met down the pub, perhaps people you're related to, or you've been to school with, or you have some real deep-seated connection. Something that's really meaningful. People that you give a damn about. One of the things that I think we've got to do, not just have loose groups, I think we've actually got to try and develop some sort of intensity and commitment inside the groups that we have.
I agree with you. Enough, but the trouble is what we've got to
completely differently.
Sorry to talk about, but what we've got to go at is number one, we've been brainwashed from school to look at a pyramid system. And number two, we've got to guard against whatever happens in groups. A narcissist will come along and hypnotize the susceptible people and it becomes a cult. And I've seen this happen time and time again. That's why I avoid groups and clubs and things, because the narcissists always get in. And that is a big problem. We've got to guard against that.
So instead of looking for a leader, we need to look for action.
We need to look ourselves. That's right. Look in the mirror if you're looking for a leader. It's yourself.
But the important thing is most people don't. I don't know why it is. They won't do things themselves. What on earth is the problem with people? They expect somebody else to do it for them.
Yeah, but let's face it, we've been.
I think they're frightened of disapproval from society around them. This is the main thing. You must go along. And I guess this habit is learned mainly at school. Don't speak out, Johnny, at the back there. Don't ask questions. You're derailing the class. You know?
Yeah.
It's very subtle little things that seem small that like have enmeshed many people. It's the troublemakers at school that are the ones that you're after.
Yes.
It really is. It's the ones whose spirit never got broken at school, no matter what. I don't care how many times you cane me, I'm going to do it again. That. I'm not in, because the essence is you're not going to be in charge of my life. The thing is, we need ground rules of basic frameworks of law. Otherwise, I think we assume that the vast majority of people are so good. I mean that. They really are good. They mean well, and yet they are defenseless. And to a great degree, so are we. And we're trying to form, I guess, all the equipment that we need mentally, spiritually, physically to defend ourselves against an attack that's been initiated against us. We are not going out initiating warfare against these people. It's completely the other way around. They are waging war on us in small incremental steps, of which this ID situation is not such a small incremental step. This is something that they brought to fruition. As you've mentioned, they've been preparing this for a long time. And you could read documents back in the 90s. There was one called Prison Planet, I think it was, which basically nailed all this stuff even back then. So it's not that these things are new, but they will appear and be new to most people that have never come across this sort of knowledge before. And it is a shock. Going over to what you were saying, Eric, it is a shock. Because what we're involved with is we're not going to be liked. You're going to be disliked because of this, because we're turning up with a conversation that says, hey, look, things are really, really, really bad. And once you know this stuff, you're never really going to think about things in that cozy, comfortable way. We're going to take you out of your comfort zone. And that's what everybody's been trained to be in. And we're all, include me, we're all prone to convenience and comfort. And you go, well, it's only a little thing, but this is the thing that's running everybody's life so much. And so
this is going to be like the lockdown again. This is going to be like the lockdown again, but forever.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's a good phrase. That's a really good observation, Nathan. Exactly. If it comes to fruition, it will be that. Yeah.
That was actually, I think that was the test that was the prototype that they did with the lockdown. That was probably we're testing out, how it'll work, because these people are bloody evil right the way through. But
I think one of the things we have to, can I make a point here? I mean, I'll give you the reason why ultimately we're going to win. Their system cannot succeed. It's going to fail. Nobody believes in it. It's got nothing to offer. It's not attractive. The only thing it's got is money, right? There's only so much that people will do for money. Ultimately, a system based upon money is corrupt. What we see at the minute is everyone in the system is just corrupt. Look at this war in Ukraine as a really good example. A third of the money that was sent never got there because it was skimmed off in corruption before it left. And then when it arrived, a third of that was taken. And then the arms that were sent, they were sold into terrorism. And then there's drugs and all the rest. It's just a giant string of corruption. Our politicians want to keep this war going because they're taking enormous bribes off it. Nobody believes in any of it.
I agree.
What happens? So what happens in the end? You're going to end up with something like East Germany, where eventually just everyone turns their back and the system all falls down.
Yeah.
The system can't keep going because really nobody believes in it. Everyone is just exploiting the system, and eventually it becomes a complete joke. And I think we're very close to that point already. The new control that they're introducing is almost like an act of desperation. You know, they think it's their sort of final pinnacle of achievement that they're going to cement the system in place. But from where I'm standing, it looks more like an act of desperation when the system's actually collapsing, and this is its last gasp. I think if they get this in, it'll be very uncomfortable. It'll do a lot of damage. I wonder if it'll still be in place in 10 years' time.
I doubt it. I very much doubt it. You're right about Eastern Europe.
One of the things we have to be aware of is if the system collapses, we're going to be in a different problem of self-sufficiency, because this is the system that feeds us. This is the supply chain that brings food to our mouths. What happens when this falls down? There isn't an outcome in this situation where we don't need self-sufficiency. We have got to work out how to feed ourselves. We've got to work out how to get by without money and buying goods from the system. There are only two alternatives. One is permanent imprisonment, and the other is the system collapses. Either way, we need an alternative.
Well, Steve's said here, what is it? We need to become ungovernable. No man has the right to rule. It starts one mind at a time. Our mind, then truthers, then the sleepyheads. It's called natural law. It was invented by God. So we need to become, I agree with him there, ungovernable.
So rather than being, rebels, we actually need to be building something. We need to build our own system that can support us. We're not interested in who we're fighting against. We're interested in what we're going to do, what we're going to build, the constructive things that we can do. If we can't do something constructive, we can't survive. Fighting is not going to feed us.
I agree with you.
In a way, I agree with everything you've said, Nathan. I think, in a way, adopting the stance right now that we need to build our alternative food system, or our own food system, for want of a better phrase, needs to be adopted tomorrow morning by everybody. That means getting organized. If you've got a garden, literally, I've mentioned this before. I know nothing about it. And I'm thinking that with a little bit of organization in little streets or enclaves or whatever, many gardens could be turned over to supply a great deal of food to the people that live in those particular areas. Lots of that as a culture to revitalize that. I mean, they did that in World War II, didn't they? Dig for victory. Yes. Everybody started turning their gardens over.
How about talking to a farmer? So about a week ago, I was out walking in the country. It was, the equinox, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And we went out walking across a sheep field. And suddenly I realized I was walking across a ridge and furrow field. Do you know what that is?
No.
Ridge and furrow is where it used to be ploughed. There used to be a village there, and they ploughed this. So what happened was a plough turned soil over to the right. So you went up one way, and then you came down the other way. And the plough, pushed to the right in one direction, right in the other direction, pointing towards the centre. Basically, you've got a series of mounds across a field. They're a furlong long. That furlong is how far you could plough before the horse needed to turn round. I'm trying to explain agriculture to you. Basically, this is the remnants of where a village used to be and how they used to plough the land, each a series of identical long plots for each member of the village. There'd been a village there, and the enclosures destroyed it. But the remnants of that are still visible in the land that they cultivated for centuries. So here was a village, people lived there, and the land was taken from them. I seem to have lost the point here. The point is, though, the land that used to feed us is still there. The farmers, some of these farmers realise there's no place for them in the modern corporate world. They have that land. They would probably, why wouldn't they want a relationship with us if we paid for the food?
Well,
and we don't have to pay with money. You know, we could pay with something else.
Well, Goldback. There we go. I know I'm on about that, but Richard Vobes, apparently, Marlene says Richard Vobes did a video today saying he thinks it's over for them. I'll have to look at that video.
Now, what does that mean, Mylene? What does that mean? I was with Richard Vobes for 3 hours because he lives near me. Saturday, not this Saturday, 10 days back. Maybe I mentioned it on my show on Thursday. I had a fantastic conversation with him. So maybe what you're saying, Mylene, is that he thinks it's over for them in terms of getting a farm. Is that what you mean? Maybe if you write a comment and I can track it, I'll go and look at the video. Oh,
yes, it's a good idea. Because no, I think what Mylene means is that it's all over for the powers that be. Maybe.
Oh, right. Okay. Good.
Hang on. Gary said, what was it? I think Vobes just wants to give us hope, mainly, which is always welcome. That's right. That's it. And
well, I think he's practically applied. He's got practical plans to act as a farmer. And he's just, everybody's saying he can't do it, and you understand that there's lots of naysayers. You don't know. What else have we got to do? This is what I keep saying. You might as well have a go. People are almost like so frightened of failure. It's that thing. If you're frightened of failure, you'll never come up with anything good. If you're not willing to be wrong, you're never going to come up with anything useful. You just got to take it on board. Look, I'm going to have a go at this. It might turn out that I get my arse kicked, but I'm going to stay fully awake for the entire process so that it don't get kicked again. And
I repair everything.
Can I just make another interjection?
Yeah, certainly.
So here's a good example of what other people are doing. So in Gateshead, there's a Polish bakery, right, in the Team Valley. This is a commercial bakery, baking, loads of loaves, sending them out all over the place. Nobody speaks English. One person there went in, you got this large business, commercial bakery, sending bread out all over the place. Nobody there speaks English. What does that mean to you? It means they're not part of British society. They're part of an alternative economy. These things are being built. They exist. It's just we're not doing them. Other people are doing it. What's wrong with us? Other people are doing it. These different communities like the Poles, the Romanians, whatever else, they're doing their own stuff because they want their unique type of food. They want what they want. And they're doing it for themselves. They're not engaging with British businesses. They've developed their own parallel economy.
Another one was the miners' strike. I think it was Hindus. I'm not sure. I could be wrong. They actually supplied food for the miners and for their families. We don't hear about that, but they actually gave them that. They actually clubbed round and gave them food, and they had soup kitchens for them, which was absolutely a fantastic thing for them to do. And I actually think we could. Feed ourselves,
Eric.
Certainly.
Nathan, your question, what's wrong with us? I think is
we're
still part of us. What we're still part of us is a large part of us, even us here, that still thinks that we can get the government to do its proper job for us. There's an aspect of our personality is wrapped up in this.
If only we vote for another party.
If only we could get the right people in. If only Nigel Farage steps up to the plate. If only all of this stuff, it's actually like a subconscious little routine in our programming. It's very strong.
It's an obstacle.
It's a massive obstacle because we've all grown up in a place which has, all right, we've moaned about everything our entire lives, but the moaning was of a different caliber to what we're talking about now. This is different. We've talked, what we were moaning about in the past has always been serious issues, but effectively on the surface. This is about the fundamental foundation, about the way life is to be managed at the very root of the management of the nation. And the history of us as a nation is always of all this technical stuff that we've invented. It's off the charts out of these islands. It's absolutely ridiculous. But you grow up in it. You just think it's normal. And of course, everybody's been trained, even now, you get an education, you go get a proper job and you'll earn money. And that's why I pay attention to the money markets. This entire story that we're wrapped up in, we're a bit like fish in water. This is the only story that we've known. And we're bringing people to say, there's another story that could be told here. There's a proper one. And of course, we're tapping back into a region of harder physical work. People are not on for that, probably, because they think they can't do it or it's going to be unpleasant. I suspect it will be a challenge.
Or they just don't know how.
They don't know how, and they don't. It's like all you need is a couple of guides, somebody to show you how and hold your hand a bit so that you can get up and running. And then you can show your next door neighbor how as well. My neighbors just built a greenhouse and gave me some tomatoes the other day, and they were very nice, even though they were very wonky and didn't look like a proper tomato. They tasted very tomatoey. They were good. It's
That's
just
all
a
that
start.
matters.
It is all that matters.
But the trouble is, it's a bit like, this is 100% true. A teacher told me, they asked the school children, where does bacon come from? The answer came back, Tesco's.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, the children, yeah, where does bacon come? Oh, Tesco's. I mean, that's it. And that's true.
We're running on a whole set of myths, aren't we? The whole thing. This is what is disconcerting to everybody. All of the myths that have held us together as a people, and you need them. They're an inherent part of one's culture. You know, stories and teachings get boiled down into little sort of tales that are told. They're all meshed into our history as a people. And, you know, we're the people of the Union Jack, and apparently we had an empire and all this kind of stuff. And it runs deeper than just it happening 200 years ago. It's like there's a momentum train psychologically that runs through people for decades and decades, hundreds of years afterwards. And we're going to have to be brought to viewing ourselves in a different way, in the way that we probably viewed ourselves in the past. We don't have the opportunities to rebel in the way that we used to. And I'm thinking, for example, like the Peasants' Revolt, because there were all there were horses and men on legs. That was your transport mechanism of the day. There was nothing else. There was no mechanized transport. There was no mechanized warfare. It was about men at arms, and the laborers on the land could become and did become those men at arms overnight once they got really hacked off. And they made they shook up the power elite massively. It's a huge thing. That's why it's not talked about much, but it's a serious thing. And they were dealing with exactly the same principle. They were being bullied, and they never signed on for that. They were being shat upon from a great height, and they didn't like it. We can't do that now. I think what you're saying about, as a people, I've always felt we're terrible at defending against ourselves. We're much better at building. If we build the life we want and talk about the life we want and get it passed around more, we just need little clusters and groups. They keep me going. I'm going, well, if it keeps me going, it'll keep the other people in the group going, won't it?
Another thing,
and if
growing food, sorry, I didn't mean to cut in there, but growing food is not that difficult. You don't have what they call green fingers. There's YouTube which you can actually see professionals showing you how to do it. We never had that before. And you can find it on the internet almost instantly how you can grow things.
Not that easy either. It takes real commitment.
Well, yes and no.
It does.
I mean, but then look at what Louise Wilcox says. Yeah, let's vote in another useless twat who couldn't run a tap, let alone my life. And it's true. It's true. And Mark Anthony said, I should get Bowl Hat Farmer back on the show. I want to. He's gone very quiet. I don't think he's doing any videos. I don't know what's happened to him. So I'm going to try and get him back on, though, because he's good. He really knows his stuff. And he had a shop up in Suffolk Trouble is, it's a bit of a long way to go and go and get my veg, you know. Now, Mark Anthony says, and this is what children should learn. Everyone needs to learn basics of self-sufficiency, growing your own food, basic survival skills, etc. And this is what I actually had in mind, and I kept a bit quiet about it for an extension of the channel or TikTok. I'm thinking of doing it on just 5-minute or 10-minute videos of DIY, because it's something that I don't throw away. I repair things. I'd service my own cars and things like that. Now, I've always taken it as natural, but I'm the only person where I live that repairs his own car. Other people don't. Mind you, my car's so old, it's insured against fire, theft, and Viking attacks, you know. But sorry, but seriously, I just repair things. I naturally do that, and what it is. It's people haven't got the nerve to have a try. It's like you said earlier. If you try, you don't always succeed. I mean, I've done a lot of failures, but you've got to do a lot of failures to find the success. That's what a learning process is. But
I think a part of it, Eric, is just coming back to this comfort and convenience thing. That it's such a massive barrier. You know, I'll just go down the supermarket and get it sorted out. Well, the ID cards look as though that's going to stop that happening. If that's the case, oh, you ain't got your ID, you can't buy any potatoes from Tesco's. Okay, I don't care, I'm growing my own. It's getting into that backup position. I think we have to create a sense. I think we have it here. We have to transmit and escalate a sense of urgency amongst our own people. They have to get a sense of urgency about it, an attitude, and see it as a great challenge and a great opportunity to grow into stronger people. We have to paint it positively, because there are positives. It's just that you never get round to them in the conversation, because we get hypnotized by all the potential negatives that are going to hit us first. Oh, they're going to do this to us. Oh, they're going to do that to us. Yeah, they probably are. But it might be that you're in a position that when they do it to you, it doesn't make any bloody difference, because you've made yourself strong with the people in your street or your little village. You know, in cities, I don't know how it's going to work. That's not going to be fun. But you know, never say never with any of these things. And it's interesting as well, Nathan, you bring up all the land grab, as it were, and this is another thing as well. You know, it's a backdrop really to most of Dickens' stories. He's talking about a people there in the 1800s. Many of the were pulled off the land into these terrible squalors. You know, there's Oliver Twist about the absolute ruin of London. Oh, it was marvellous and everything. No, it wasn't actually. Not if you're in the East End and living in a hovel. It was bloody horrible. And you get all these, you've got all this bucolic happiness, you know, in the early stories, you know, and then they end up going to the cities and things go bad, and the sternness and the discipline. And we look at it, well, that's when men were men and all that. It's when they were beaten to death and put into the poorhouse for owing money and all this other stuff. You know, look at Scrooge. It's an amazing story. It's a wonderful story, but I mean, the actual sordid details of what was going on in Englishmen's and English women's lives, well, we don't want to talk about that too much. We've been treated like crap all the time. So that it's an attitudinal thing that those at the top obviously believe, and we're not going to change that belief, and I haven't got the time or energy, nor would I care, that they're meant to be in charge all the time. Well, maybe they need to be left with that belief. It's just that their in-chargeness should not extend to us. We have to become Polish, Nathan. We have to operate as our own redeveloping peasant people. And we have to become the pleasant peasants. We really don't have much time for your international gobbledygook. That's your hobby. Well done. We're not in that. We don't do that. We do this. And it means people reacquainting themselves, I think, to some degree with the older entertainments. Modern so-called entertainment is, of course, just a massive hypnotizing machine. That's really what it is. There's, you know, you got. I'll see if I can find. They now talk about binge watching series. Why? What is the point of that? If you actually stop and read a novel written by Dickens, not that many people do, I suspect, but if you were to do that and put time in, your rewards as a person creating your own narrative in your head dwarf anything that you're going to get off that screen. They dwarf it, but people have lost that habit to some degree. Not everybody. There's a lot of reading, but there's a lot of tut published now and everything. In fact, I saw something the other day about I don't know if I mentioned this on Thursday. I came across this video of a woman who's a writer. It's about half an hour long, talking about the fantasy genre. Was I talking about this on Thursday, Eric? I can't remember if I was.
I can't remember. Carry on.
It was talking. It's just interesting about the use of novels why they're why is everything no damn good, right? That's literally the case. I felt like this for a long time. Why is it all formulaic? Films died when Heaven's Gate lost $300 million or whatever it was in this Michael Cimino film in 1979. He made this Western and it just absolutely bombed and the studio nearly went broke or did go broke. And after that, the accountants came in. And that's why films to this day have been franchises, formulaic. They have a formula for the plot. It's why you don't need to watch them. You've already seen it 300 times before over the last 40 years. Well, it turned out that in the fantasy genre, and there is no such thing as far as I'm concerned, you've got, I was just thinking about buying myself a really good copy of Lord of the Rings. I've read it about twice, and I thought for my winter reading, I might just go off and read it. And she was talking about this, and apparently there's a guy, an author in America, came up with a formula for fantasy novels in the 1970s, and they made an absolute fortune on this formula, and they all conform to it, and it's why they're boring, and they're derivative and silly, and they don't mean anything. They're just all, it's a victory of marketing and lowest common denominator stuff. The writers don't take risks because if they do, they don't get published. And so the whole thing has become such a money-driven marketing. No one's writing to create a really great tale, which inadvertently might become a bestseller or whatever. I understand that novelists want to be purchased so they could make a living. But, you know, what's that story? There's a book inside everyone, and in the vast majority of cases, that's where it should remain.
You're right.
So what we're facing, just to go back, is a society where nobody takes any risks.
Correct.
And nobody has any creativity.
And look how bland.
This is the ultimate punchline of digital ID.
Well,
when we have social credit, people will just be consumers. There'll be no creativity. How many people have sat round a bonfire? That's a lot of fun. Yeah. How many people have sat and had a sing-song? That's a creative thing. How many people had storytelling? These are things that people used to do, and they didn't cost any money, but they meant something real in terms of their humanity.
Yes, that's what I meant by these older forms of entertainment that we would have to go back to, because they're the real ones. They have juice in them. People go, oh, there's this record being released by this bint who dances around with no clothes on. Great. But if you're sat around a fire and someone whips out a guitar and they can play, apart from the fact that it's intermittently awkward and embarrassing at times, which is also good for you, it's real. It's genuine. By the way, we burn quite a few fires here. I'll be burning quite a few, and we sit around them on an evening because I've got a lot of trees to burn, and I cut a lot of them down. They've all dried out over the summer. We've got a lot of firewood, and we'll be sitting out and doing that and talking under the stars. Those things are great. They're really, really, they're fantastic things to do. And it's reviving or making those things slightly more frequent again in people's lives. Everything is so marketed, all the sort of chains and everything. God, it is dull. It really is dull.
Well, actually, Paul.
So before World War I, there was no recorded music. And people had to do it for themselves.
Correct. Yep. And I'll tell you something else. You look at how bland everything's got. You've only got to look at something like the 1960s, okay? Mid-60s. Look at the burgeoning pop groups and their stage sets. They paid a lot of money for them, and craftsmen built these beautiful stage sets, and they were really advanced and out of this world. More modern looking than they are now. No CGI or anything like that. It is really good. And you look at Art Nouveau, that was prior to 1914. fantastic architecture, brilliant. And Art Nouveau carried on until 1927 in America, but in Britain it stopped in 1914 because of the war. And
So the point is digital ID.
yeah,
We're going to have a world with no future,
that's right.
and it's up to us. You know, we can talk about it or we can do something. So I really hope at this point we're going to get off to a flying start. A lot of people are going to sign this petition. People are going to realize it's awful. But it's not enough to say, ain't it awful? What are we going to do about it? And, you know, it's a con trick. Yes. It's about psychology. Yes. But ultimately, we have to become self-reliant very quickly. We have to make connections with people who have the stuff that we need.
Yeah, you're right.
It's one thing to talk about, well, we can talk to a farmer. Yeah, but you really need to find a farmer. You know, there is no supply chain. There is no wholesaler. We've got to sort something out.
I agree with you.
It's desperate. And we have to find something that farmer will want. Well, when we haven't got money to pay him because the money's been, whatever it is, sequestered by the government.
Well, I think that the funny thing that happened is when people had to register chickens, and people are registering chickens that they bought in the local supermarket. This is what we need to do. Just keep taking the mickey. Just ignore them or laugh at them. Just treat them as they are. They're freaks. We don't want freaks. We don't need them. We don't need government. We don't need these people.
I'll tell you something that's happening right now. Just near where I live, there's a huge burial pit. They've declared this H1N1 or whatever it is, bird flu. And they've been slaughtering millions of birds and other animals.
Pogs.
With a giant burial pit. It's been there for most of the summer. What's happening to our local farmers? There are lots of other things that are happening at the same time as all of this. We know that farms are being taken away and turned into solar farms. You know, there's this other stuff that's going on at the same time. We've suddenly, you know, there's more of a crisis that's happening here than we realise. But we've got to do something.
Well, I'm pleased to see people are doing something about ULEZ. There's people called, what they call them, urban lumberjacks. I think that's all as far as I'm going to go, if you get what I mean. You've heard about the urban lumberjacks.
It's important, yes, but fighting doesn't feed us. This is, right. I think people have to get really a great deal more focused. This is not hypothetical and in the future. I've been talking about this for over 15 years now. And, you know, 15 years ago, I got ridiculed. I got called a conspiracy theorist. I don't mind that. I don't really care. But now we're at the point where the rubber hits the road. This is an immediate reality. This is going to hit us in the next year.
I agree.
There is no left. There is no more time.
Yeah. Every minute, again, going back to what Yuri Brezhnev said, every minute that ticks away, getting closer, closer to totalitarianism. That's it. And I think that's, quite honestly, I think, as my granddad used to say, there's always a bit of good comes out of bad. He always used to say that. And I think that things are going to turn out not what anybody expects, but it will be in our advantage. I really do. I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen in the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I just do not know. I mean, I didn't know. Well, let's face it. How many of us saw the lockdown coming along? No, we didn't. So I think that it's like everything else. Every dog has its day, and government's had its day. We've had enough of government because more people have been killed by their own governments than all the wars put together. They are lethal.
But this government might kill me. It might kill us.
Precisely. They're lethal. If you looked at them like an illness, it would be, government would be like a kind of plague that hits the earth, that's wiping loads of people out. Look at Chairman Mao. Almost 1 billion people got wiped off the map by Chairman Mao. 1 billion. You couldn't even begin to imagine the numbers. But now Aunt Sally's coming. Unfortunately, many of our farmers took the EU incentives, money to lay their land to go wild. They have been growing all for a long time. When do you drive past a field with any crops growing? Excellent point. And also, how many times do you see animals grazing? Sheep or cattle. There used to, near where I live, be loads of sheep farms and cattle and pig farms. Not now. Not now. Not at all. But Louise Wilcox has said, totalitarian tiptoe. They lose, they know it. Sorry, they lose, they know it too. Hence the desperation and the speed they have raised it up. Raised up the age ads. I can't work that one out. But anyway, I think they've speeded things up. So I think that's what Louise is saying. Well, anyway, I think we've been on for almost 3 hours. And I think I need to hit the hay because I was up extremely early this morning. And this has been a fantastic show. But what we've learnt from this, thank you very much, Nathan, thank you very much, Paul, is we've got to get our bloody finger out and do something. We've got to do something.
Really enjoyed listening to you.
Yeah. Now, I think it's time for Paul to do a plug about Thursday. So his show.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh yeah, we're on at 8. We're at same time as Eric's show this Thursday on Rumble and YouTube.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got any guests or not. There's plenty to talk about, so we'll see. It's only Monday, isn't it? And hopefully I'll still have my cold.
Well, if you can keep your cold going until Dr. Mayhill comes on, it's a bit like if you've got a fire. And then he phoned the fire brigade and said, "Well, can you keep it going until we get there?"
We won't have time to do shows soon because we're going to be so busy growing veg and building up a people's farmers union or whatever you want to call it, PUF, People's Union with Farmers. I don't know.
Well, hello.
Yeah. I just thought I'd feed you a line there, Eric, but I think it's deadly serious. And I think it could be really energizing. It's a matter of it's a shift in energy and focus. We're better as builders than we are as resistors. I don't believe in resistance, really. It's just I know everybody talks about it. It's more of this combative stuff that won't produce anything. I go for the old judo thing. If you resist your enemy, you're giving them force against which to grow. It gets them crossed, and they devote even more resources to wiping you out. It's more like sidestepping the whole issue, not being part of their game and finding these temporary holding points where we can do it. I mean, that's what Sun Tzu say about warfare. He said, if you're going to fight a war, if you're going to fight a battle, the best way to do it is to outnumber your enemy 7 to 1 and annihilate them completely in one day. This leads to the lowest loss of life. But if you can't do that, if you're outnumbered massively, run away and hide in the hills and deal with it from there until you can deal with it. And it's just really logic. It's not about false courage or you're a coward or you're running away or anything like that. It's a matter of using your brains and saying, they've been prepping for this for a long time. We are now being faced with changing the way that we live our days. That's the big challenge. Our days have got, I include me, my day has got to change the way I use the minutes in it with the time that we have left available to us. Some hopefully have got an awful lot more than others. Those of us that are seasoned individuals who've had a good chunk of life, not so much time left, but that still doesn't mean to say we can't use it really well.
That's right. When it's better. I mean, Steve has said, Survivor Steve says, if we are signing petitions, we have resigned ourselves to slavery. We need to become independent of mind before we can be can ever generate freedom in the world. Cause and effect. Absolutely bloody spot on there. Absolutely spot on. And Steve's going
Yeah.
to come on the show talking on a very interesting subject soon about long pointy things which I can't talk about. I think it is going to be on Rumble only, which go bang at the end of them, if you get what I mean, you know. So that's what Steve's going to be talking about, but not for an uprising or anything like that. For sport, for hobby, for target practice and things like that. There's nothing to do with any violence, aggression. I'll make that very, very clear. Okay, nothing like that.
I think the thing about the petition, I completely agree with what Steve said, is whether these 2 million can be reached. You see, those 2 million people that signed that thing, we want them listening to this show or shows like this, or we need them to connect up in some way. There is a positive in it. It's not the positive that the petition signers want. Oh, if we all sign a petition, they're going to listen to us. Forget that. What it is useful is it sends out a signal, which we've picked up on here, that there's a lot of people. That's its one useful thing. Look at the number of people that don't want this. We don't take the view that the petition is going to be effective as a petition. No, it won't be. But they've declared their intent on a forum, and you've seen those numbers, and we're going, okay, this is serious. Because as I said, that means at least 20 million. At least 20 million out of the population are seriously hacked off with it. They've just not even found the form yet. So there's a strong base on which to build, and it is a matter of getting organized into constructive behavior, literally, you know, to sort ourselves out and provide ourselves with the things that we need, which does include food and water. It really does.
And also,
that more than anything else.
Looking at my proposed little project, and that is the lazy gardener. Because if you look in old books, you don't have to keep going out watering your plants. You can have self-watering things, and without any electronics or anything like that. Do it the old way. And you can actually have water. You don't have to keep watering your plants. You can do it the old way with using bits of string, bits of wool, and a pail of water. So there we go. So it's surprising you don't have to be a slave to your garden. There is ways and means you can do it, and the rewards are fantastic. I mean, my celery tastes. It's peppery like it should be. Tomatoes.
Isn't celery the only food that when you eat it, you actually burn off more energy than you absorb from it?
You probably do, yeah.
The masticating, actually, you burn off more calories than you actually take in. You actually get thinner. Not like eating potatoes.
No, I put it in stew, actually, but I'll tell you something. What I do, you see, this is what I call the lazy gardener. I'm thinking of doing a series of films called The Lazy Gardener. And what I do, I go to the supermarket, I buy some celery, then I save the trunk, the bottom bit, put it in some water on a sunny shelf, and in a couple of days it starts to grow roots and foliage. You then pot it, and it grows like billio. And
so
it's very
tasty. We're entering the last battle.
We are.
The next year, in a year's time, things are going to look very different. I hope we're ready for it.
That's right.
I hope we're ready for it. Everybody, please listen. You've got to be ready for what's coming. We can't know what it's going to be. That's the trouble. But we know that something big's going to happen.
Yes. I agree.
You've got to try and find a supportive network so that you're not on your own.
Yep.
That's right. Well, on that note, whatever happens, now, you know, I don't know if you'd like to say anything we've had a fantastic chat room tonight. We always have a fantastic chat room, but I'm really proud of everybody in chat. Thanks, mates, ladies, gentlemen. We've really done a good job. You've done well tonight. I don't know if you've been reading chat at all, but wow, there's been
Yeah,
some
I have.
fantastic
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. And remember, if you tell someone else and someone else tells someone else and someone else tells someone else, it's surprising. But was it Duct Tape 71 says, well, Duct Tape 71 is a sticky situation. Something big is going to happen, but you don't know when or what or how. And this mystery, people are all on YouTube. The majority of people are on YouTube because of YouTube Night Tonight. And people are finding that I'm reading out comments that are not in the YouTube chat. The reason why is because we're on Rumble as well, and I'm reading both out, Rumble and YouTube. So anyway, thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, Nathan. And
thanks, Eric.
And
Thank
whatever
you, Eric.
happens,
Thank you, Nathan.
Well, thank you. Could you please, subscribe, put the old thumbs up, tell other people, and if you're feeling a bit generous, there's a buy me a coffee down below here. You see, not in my crutch; it's down below in the description. So there we go. And always remember, what wins through is laughter. As the greatest weapon we've got against governments. Can you imagine if everybody wee-weed themselves laughing every time Keir Starmer opened his mouth? Hello. And we've got to keep laughing. So whatever happens, have a bloody good laugh. And please join us. Was it you're on Paul English on Rumble live at 8:00 this Thursday. Thank you very much and good night.
Thanks. Good night.